Alright, so Spring Boot ships with, a lot of features which I want to give you an overview in this video. These are some of the things that you should be aware of. So first is first class support for Java 25, whilst retaining Java 17 compatibility. Also a complete modularization of the Spring Boot codebase, providing a smaller and more focused jar. So it means that you don't end up with stuff that you don't really need. Also portfolio-wide improvements for null-safety for JSpecify. We also have support for API versioning and HTTP service clients for REST-based applications. So before, the way that we used to configure this used to be pain, but now it's much easier. There's also a brand new way of registering beans, Jackson 3 support, built-in resilience features, Java virtual thread support, and many others. And if you want to see the actual list of all of the new features, literally just go to this link, which I'm going to leave in the description of this video, and it goes through pretty much the list of features that it actually has in here. And you can see, there's some miscellaneous as well. You can go through everything that Spring Boot 4 ships, as well as some of the deprecations that they've made. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. If you're coding on a tiny laptop screen like this, you're leaving a lot of productivity on the table. Before we jump in, a huge thanks to BenQ for supporting this video. I've been using their 32-inch 4K RD series programming monitor along with the BenQ Ergo ARM, and it's become my go-to setup for coding. As developers, we stare at text all day. If your screen is small, washed out, or full of glare, your eyes are done by 5 p.m. The RD series solves that. It's a 32-inch 4K panel, which means razor-sharp text and enough space to keep your IDE, browser, and docs side by side without feeling cramped. It's built specifically for programmers with features like coding modes, optimized for light and dark themes, and a nano matte panel that kills reflections so windows and lights don't distract you. For late night sessions, night hours protection and moon halo backlight reduce eye strain, so you can code longer without feeling destroyed. With USB-C up to 90-watt power delivery, one cable powers your laptop and drives the monitor. And with the Display Pilot 2, you can instantly snap your windows into your preferred coding layout. I'm also using the BenQ Ergo ARM, which lets me put the monitor closer, push it aside, or rotate it vertical for logs with almost no effort. It supports large monitors, has smooth gas spring mechanism, and built-in cable management to keep the setup clean. If you want to level up your dev workspace, check out the BenQ RD series and the Ergo ARM. Links are in the description. And again, a huge thanks to BenQ for supporting this channel. Let's carry on with Spring Boot 4. So right here, I'm within the official website for Spring Initializr, and this is where you can configure the Spring Boot application. And right here you can see that this is the exact same thing as you've seen for many years now. So you can set up the project, Maven, and then Java, Kotlin if you want. We also have the Spring Boot version in here. So by the time you watch this video, maybe there's going to be newer versions in here, but just stick with 4 for now. And it should just work across pretty much every single other version. Then for the project metadata, you can configure this according to your project, the packaging, jar or war. So most of the times you want jar. And in the configuration, now they have this new addition where you can set up YAML or properties for your configuration. And in here you can see that now all the versions of Java, they are basically the past, and you can see, we could choose 25 in here, 21 as well as 17. And obviously dependencies in here, so this is the exact same thing. So for me, I'm not going to configure the application through Spring Initializr, so I'm going to use IntelliJ instead. And if you want a license for IntelliJ for 6 months, or yes, for 3 months actually, I do have a coupon for you. So all you have to do is just click on the link and the description of this video, and then I'll give you the coupon absolutely for free, so you can try IntelliJ Ultimate, which is amazing. So let's open up IntelliJ. And if you don't know much about IntelliJ as well, I do have a course covering IntelliJ top to bottom. All right, so in here, I'm going to create a new project and just bring this window right in here. And in here, you can see that we can select between different generators. So in my case, I'm going to choose in here springboot, and then the name I'm going to leave as demo. I'm not going to create a Git repository for this, or maybe yes, yeah, let's just leave it on. And then you can choose the type, so Groovy, Kotlin, Gradle, or Maven. It doesn't really matter as well. And then you can change this. And in here, JDK, I'm going to leave 25, and then the Java version 25 as well, and then jar. Next, in here, we have the ability of choosing the version. Have a look, Spring Boot, and then the version. So the same thing that you saw from the website, but in a much nicer user experience in here. All right, cool. So for this, what we're going to do is let's just use the Spring Web in here. And I think this should be sufficient for us to explore some of the features, and I'll show you how to build a RESTful API as well. And if you want to learn more about Spring Boot, we do have a complete roadmap as well as bundles covering all of this. All right, so here I'm going to say create project. All right, so this is pretty much it. And in here, let me just close the help.md and let me open SRC. So this is where we have pretty much everything in terms of our classes. So click on demo application, and this should be very familiar. And actually by now, or actually new versions of Java, we don't need the public in there. And obviously this whole thing also, if you're just using plain Java, is completely different now. But all right, cool. So let me just run the application in here. And let's just make sure that everything is working fine. And you can see that we have in here Tomcat Saturn on port 8080. Cool. Now, in terms of building an API, nothing has changed. So let's just create a new in here Java class. And let's just say in here student and then controller. And I'm not going to add anything for now. And here we need to say @ so @ and then REST controller, and then @ and then request and then mapping. Cool. So also let's define, before we create the method in here, let's define the model for this. So I'm going to say new and then Java class, and then here I'm going to say student, just like this. And this is going to be a record. And I'm going to cancel. And here, let's just say integer, and then ID, and then string. Oops. So string, and then name. And also we have, let's just say in here, I don't know. Integer, and then age, for example. Doesn't really matter. You can choose whatever you want. Now let's go back to the controller, and within the controller now, let's create a new method, and this is going to be a public method, and we're going to return a list of student. So student, just like this, and I'm going to say get all and then students. So students, there we go, and let's simply return. So we're going to return a list.of. And inside we can say new and then student, and then pass the ID. So 1, comma, and then I'm going to say foo, and then age is going to be, I don't know, 20. And let's have a second student in here. So comma, and let's take this and then paste and then remove the comma there. So this is not JavaScript. And here I'm going to say 2, and then this is going to be bar. And let's say that this is, I don't know, 44, for example. Cool. Now, if we want to expose this method right here as an endpoint, we just have to, we just have to, in here, say @ and then get and then mapping. So you saw get exchange. I'll come back to get exchange in a second, but this is pretty much it. So let me just reload the application. And in here, you can see that we have this web or world icon in here. Let me just click on it and then generate request in HTTP client. That's it. And if I in here say send the request, so send the request, you can see that we have a 200, and have a look, we have the JSON array in here, and you can see that this is a 200 status code. All right, so this was to localhost 8080. So usually what you want to do is you want to, in here, say, for example, API. So get mapping API / and then v1 / and then students. Just like this. And if I refresh and then go back to the declaration for HTTP, there we go. So now instead of saying localhost 8080, I just say localhost 8080 API v1 and then students. And if I send a request, you can see that this works. So one of the things which is new is that if I close that for a second, is that in here we can actually replace this with curly brackets and then say version. So version, and in here we can then pass a version. So say version, and the version for this is going to be, I think we can pass numbers. No, has to be a string. So this is going to be the version 1 in here. So the way we configure this, and this is just a way of standardizing how the API versioning should work. So open up application.properties, and in here I can say API, and then have a look. We have, the version is required for each request. Let's just say in here true, and then version, or actually let me just filter API and then version, and then use path segment. So if you want to use the version within HTTP headers or query params, you can then say here use header or media type parameter as well as query parameter. But for us, let's just use path segment in here. So use path segment. There we go. And this right here, if I'm not mistaken, is the index of which the version should be, basically. And also, I think API version in here, you can see that we can say, supported versions. So we can pass an array. So maybe we just want to have 1 and then 2. So API v1 or API v2. And if you have a v3, then it's not supported. So let's just reload this. And what I want to show you is that within the HTTP, so I think it's under Scratch. So Scratches in here, click on this guy, and you can see that it's right here. So now if I send this request, you can see that this works. And if I say v3, for example, in here, have a look. So it's a 404, it's a 400 in here, which is a bad request, right? So it's not even saying 404, right? So this is a bad request. And so this is basically one of the changes that they introduced. And if I go back to the controller in here, if you want to change a different version, so say for example you have a v2, paste that, and then here I could say v2, for example, right? And then here I could say so let me just say don't ask again, add, and in here I'm going to say 2 right here. And obviously I could leave the method name the same, and then here let's just say hello and then bye, for example. There we go. Cool. So this is the version 2 that we have. And if I reload and then go to generated requests in here, and now I can say v2, send the request, and I can see that we have a completely different response in here, right? So this is really great when you deploy into production and you have different clients using all the versions of the application, which basically have to support all the versions, but then you can start to roll out new versions as you have changes which are not backwards compatible, right? So the other thing in here that I want to talk to you about is a new way of registering beans. So typically before, if I create a new Java class in here, and let's just say SMS and then sender, for example. So this will be an interface, and in here I can say void and then send. So let's just say send, and then let's just say string and then 2. So this is the phone number that we want to send, right? And now in here, let's just have a new implementation. So let's just say Twilio SMS sender, and this should implement and then SMS sender. And obviously we need to override this bad boy in here. And here I could just say south and then sending SMS 2 and then plus and then 2, right? And obviously in here we can basically have another one, which is, I don't know, WhatsApp, for example. And then just like that, there we go. And what I'm going to do actually is, let me just say south in here. So south, and then we could also have the messaging in here, and then go back to Twilio. There we go. And then let's just say that this is Twilio SMS sender. All right. So now, before, the way that we used to generate the appropriate bean, right, or initialize the bean that we actually wanted, depending on maybe a configuration, we used to have a bean. So in here, if I go to new class, so let's just say in here app and then config. There we go. And then we just basically have the app configuration method or annotation in here. And then we used to use the add and then bean and then do some logic in it. Now the way that we can register beans, so there's a few ways that we could do this, but let me just have in here a static, and then I'm going to say class, then I'm going to say app bean register. There we go. And this will implement bean and then register. There we go. Cool. And in here, obviously, we need to override the method. So only one method that we have. And this method right here, have a look. We have access to the environment. Have a look. Now, with this environment, what we are able to do is we could say env dot and then get, and then maybe you want to get a property, you get the value, and then if it's like in here, say that we had, I don't know, in here app and then SMS and then sender equals to, and then I don't know, Twilio, for example, right? So then you could say, right, so we're going to get this value in here. So get the value. And then in here, I'm going to say SMS, and then sender. And then you could do a switch. So switch in here on SMS sender. And you could say, right, so if the value is equal to Twilio, for example, just like this, so case, and then maybe Twilio, and in here, you could then register the bean. So I could say registry, and then register, and then bean, and you have different ways of doing it. So you can specify the name, and then the actual bean class as well, and then you can specify whether it's lazy loaded or not. But for us in here, let's just have the class, and then here could say Twilio SMS sender dot class. Oops, there we go. And obviously, depending on your implementation, so maybe for integration testing, you want to have a fake SMS sender, right? So you could then use this kind of approach to initialize whatever bean that you want. All right, cool. So I'm not going to carry on and do the other case. So the last thing that we need to do here is to say at and then import. And then here we need to import app.config, or basically this class in here that we just created. And here, bear in mind that, you can have this class outside of this one. I just decided to have it as static. So yeah, depending on your implementation, you can change this accordingly. All right, now the other thing that I want to talk to you is, say for example, we have this API in here, so JSON placeholder, and we want to grab a list of to-dos. For example, you can see that, well, actually they have to-dos, they have posts in here, and we want to be able to interact with an external API. How do we go about and do this within Spring Boot 4? So here I'm gonna say, for example, we want to get all the posts, and you can see that the posts, they look like this: user ID, title, and then body. So to do this is quite straightforward. So in here, let's just take this right here, and we also need actually this, right? So we need this in here, but let's first create the model for this. So let me just grab this, go back to IntelliJ, and in here I'm going to create a new Java class, and here I'm going to say that this is a post. There we go. And let me just paste this like so, and the post in here is going to be a record instead of a class. And here we have the integer and then user ID. So exact same way that we see here. We also have the ID, which is an integer. We also have the title, which is a string, and we also have the body, which is a string. So now that we have mimic, or we represented the, and now that we have represented the payload, we can get rid of this. And now we can create a new Java and then class. And this is going to be an interface in here. And I'm going to say post and then service. And we have this annotation called @ and then HTTP exchange. And in here, we can pass a few things. Command P, we have the URL that we can pass. So in here, let's just go back. And this is the URL. Let's just take this, go back, paste. And I think this should be sufficient. And then we can actually have the methods that allows us to get data from the API. So here we know that this will return a list of posts. So I'm going to say list and then post, and I'm going to say get and then posts. Cool. All right. So now let me in here, I'm going to have the another annotation. All right. So now here we need to have @ and then get, and before was get mapping, but for this we need get exchange, and it's as simple as this. Now previously, to get this to work, we had to have some weird configuration, and yeah, it wasn't really nice, to be honest. But now the way that this works is all you have to do is under your main class, you can say @ and then import HTTP services. And in here, so oops, I didn't mean to do that. So let me just cancel that. So import HTTP services. And you can see that we can define a few things. So we have types, we have the base packages as well. And I think base packages is what we need. So base packages, and then here I can say com.amigoscode. I think this should work. So now let's basically have, so let's just in here have another controller. I'm going to say that this is a post controller. There we go. And I'm going to say API and then v1 and then posts. And here I'm going to say get all and then posts. And instead of returning a list, I'm going to inject, so private, and then we have post and then service, post service. And let's add this to constructor. So constructor, there we go, and make this final as well. And yeah, so I think this is not really working because of maybe IntelliJ, but let's just in here. So we're going to return the post. There we go. And I'm going to say post service dot get posts, which is the one that we defined within the interface. And now I just have to return this. All right, so nice and simple. So let's just reload the application and see whether this works. There we go. And then go to generated requests.http. And let me take this in here and I'm going to paste right at the bottom, and this is going to be API and then v1. So v1 in here, and then posts. And if I send the get request, hooray, you can see that we are getting data from an external API. How easy this was, right? So this is really, really good. Cool. So the other thing also is that we have some resilience methods available to us. So say, for example, we have so let me just go to in here, demo application. And in here, let's just say we have public. So public and then string. So string like so, and then let's just say foo, for example. So here we can say, and let's just say return and then some value, right? So value. So say, for example, we know that this method sometimes it might throw an exception and we want to retry. So we could use the at and then resilience or retryable. So this guy in here, and we can actually configure this. So command P, and we have a few things in here. So we have the delay, we have the jitter multiplier in here, we have the max delay, the time unit, and max retries in here, right? So I can say max retries, for example, and try 3 times, for example, comma, and then here I think we have the delay. So this is the delay between each try. So here I'm going to say 200, I think it's 200 milliseconds. And then here we also have the, I think the exponential back off, which is the multiplier in here. So let's just say multiplier and then 2, for example, exponential back, and this means exponential, and this means the and then this means exponential, and this means exponential back off. So yeah, so if you have, for example, method where you want to retry and maybe sometimes it's an exception, you can also say, I think it's command P, there is a, so yeah, includes in here. So you say includes, and then which of the exceptions that you want to enable the retryable option when the exception occurs, right? So maybe here you want to say illegal set exception .class or argument .class, for example, just like this. And then in order for you to have this up and running, you just have to say in here at the top of your main application or main class at, and then I think it's enable resilience methods, and you're good to go. Let me know what you thought about this video. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I will see you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum.